Well, hello and welcome to the Meaning Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel A. Franz. And as always, thank you for this opportunity to bring a little bit of meaning, purpose, and resilience to your day, to your week, to your month, to your year, to your life. And boy, I know I've been saying this a lot lately. What a week it's been. Good friend, uh, classmate in the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, psychonaut, and friend of the show, guest of the show, therapist Rob Romano, just left, like literally just an hour ago, packed up. Being the digital nomad that he is, stopped off here on his way from South Florida to Connecticut, which is quite the trajectory, not a straight line. On his way home for Easter to visit his family, decided to stay with my family for a couple days. And wow, we had some amazing conversations. Although we both had to work, we dedicated some time just to kind of hang out with my family and talk about the work that we do. And it was interesting. You know, I have coffee with a lot of other psychedelic therapists, ketamine providers, etc., trying to figure out just what we're going to do with this stuff, how we're going to help people. As you know, more and more, just this week, just the conversations I had with Rob. Um, and interestingly, the insight that my family was able to provide through these conversations only continues to reinforce. We had coffee with Julie Addis, former guest of the show, my ketamine provider, and just talking about how much ketamine and psilocybin, specifically, those are the areas I'm working in. Now I'm reading a book in psychedelic cannabis use. Why? Well, because it's more available. It's still not available in my area, but cannabis has gotten a bad rap for so long. We haven't studied the clinical opportunities to it. There's a great book out there that describes it, and I am neck deep in that right now. But and then of course we have some of our peers, Rob and my peers, and friends, are working in ibogaine, uh, bofu, DMT, 5-MeO DMT, um, and a variety of other substances that are bringing great healing to people, which might sound strange, right? Dan, what are you talking about? All of these illegal drugs, right? They've been illegal for about, I don't know, a little less than 100 years, maybe 50 years. But each one of these, ibogaine, cannabis, psilocybin, DMT, LSD, all come from nature, right? And we haven't been able to use them, to experiment with them, to research them for so long. We're just now getting to it, and it's an exciting science. Actually, now that I think about it, oh my goodness, I am recording today's podcast on Bicycle Day. Bicycle Day, April 19th, is a traditional holiday. I don't know if it's a holiday, it's something we recognize as the kind of the beginning of the psychedelic renaissance. It was on this day, ooh, I can't remember the year, 1938-ish, 42 maybe. I'll have to do the research. Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann had refound LSD. Um, and he had actually, so LSD actually, it's a naturally occurring acid in decaying fungus, I believe, found on the barley plant. And he had recreated it in a laboratory and put it away years prior. And then for some reason got it out in that year and was working on it a few days before April 19th and found he felt a little funny after using it and couldn't figure out why. Did some thinking, did some research, and that may have been on the 16th or 17th, and realized, oh my goodness, it was this compound I was working with. He went back to his lab today, April 19th, and more scientifically administered a dose, by today's standards, a fairly large dose, and had a full-on psychedelic experience, but he didn't know that. He thought he may have been going a little crazy. And so his assistant was not working with him that day, and he couldn't get a car ride home. So he rode his bicycle back to his house from his laboratory and proceeded to have a psychedelic and mystical experience. So that was kind of the birth of the use of LSD for, well, psychedelics and for healing, and eventually co-opted by uh, the CIA of the United States in the 50s for the MX. Is it MX? Oh, I'd have to look up the numbers. My memory's not going. We were just talking about that yesterday. Memory not great this week. Too much conversation, not enough thinking. But that yes, their experiments to use LSD as a well, as an agent for psychological warfare. All of that to say, um, as I continue to study these things and put myself in this world and see the healing potential of indigenous substances used for thousands of years, I continue to get frustrated with our modern medical use of, well, big pharma, SSRIs and benzodiazepines that must be used on a daily basis, continue to line the pockets of drug manufacturers while people still aren't getting healthy. I've heard of clients being on the same SSRI antidepressant for decades. Meanwhile, research is telling us for some people, one experience with psilocybin or MDMA or DMT can be restorative and healing, and two or three experiences over the course of a few months can produce lasting change, and people don't need to be on these other drugs on a daily basis for their lives. So, however, we face issues of legality and criminality and where we can do these things. So just know as I continue to, fortunately, one more reason it's been quite a week. We are wrapping up our studies with IPA. Not there yet. It's the home stretch. It's mile 22 of the 26-mile marathon. Uh, we're getting to the finish line, but then even after the finish line is a 2-day intensive, I don't know, 16 hours of lectures. And then we have 12 more hours of supplemental material. They tricked us. So the finish line after the finish line, the stretch is yet to come. And then there's a 200 question exam. But as we finish up our studies, many of us are getting together to discuss how do we continue to help people with these amazing substances um, in ways that are legal and won't get us in trouble, but help people. So, as the Meaning Project community comes online here in the next few months, that is certainly going to be, at one time, one edition of the Meaning Project community was just lecture and education on Frankel's logotherapy. But in my studies over the past few years, my work has become so much more than that. So the Meaning Project community will have an area to learn about the meaningful use of these substances that I've studied, either on your own or with me, or in a community, in a group setting. I will find a way to provide these safely and legally to those who want to adventure with me to Oregon, Colorado, Michigan, Costa Rica, Mexico. Rob's putting those together. Um, or maybe just my backyard. Who knows? But these opportunities will be available. Um, I am sure at this point, if you've been a long time listener, you've recognized the change into psychedelic substances for a while. I promise you, we are getting back to more Frankel and logotherapy. It always ties in there. Love to hear your feedback. What do you think about this? You know, Are you shaking your head and rolling your eyes and saying, "My God, Dr. Dan, what are you doing?" Are you intrigued? Are you interested? Do you want to hop in the Meaning Project community and find out more? Let me know. Feel free to email me, text me, call me. Many of you have my office text as well as my personal. Uh, Let me know what you think. But a few weeks ago, I promised you to go more back into the field of psychology and logotherapy. So uh, I had a beautiful recent lecture in IPI, the Integrative Psychiatry Institute. And I'm going to try to share the screen here for those of you on YouTube. For those of you listening to the podcast, I'll include a link and you can go check out this image. This is, come on, screen share. There we go. Beautiful. Um, this is a treatment map that IPI uses when working with clients. And I love how it addresses the whole human. You've probably heard me say before, certainly recently, excuse me while I get a little coffee here. Oh, shoot, I forgot. This is a new coffee. My kids thought it was a terrible idea. This is ghost pepper infused coffee beans instead of just putting cayenne in my coffee. Gets you right there in the throat a little bit. It is delicious, but not for everybody's palate. This treatment model here that I'm showing on the YouTube or on you can look it up if you got the podcast link, right? Kind of shows the human in the center with these circles coming out that are so much more a whole human approach rather than what I rail against well, the modern, the 25-year ago way that Western therapists were trained and educated. Um, it addresses lifestyle is kind of being the most outside circle. Of course, the body coming more in towards the person, and then the mind, and then what much of psychology, some of psychology still doesn't accept, and that's the spiritual component. And, I take some of that back. Um, Maybe it's more society, whereas I believe many fields of psychology are recognizing spirituality, the spirit, the nous, as logotherapy calls it, is such a core and foundational principle to be addressed in whole human health. As this model points out, lifestyle, the outside, I got to go back, right? Because, my God, Frankel, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, was telling us the human being is more just the mind and body. He was railing against Adler and Freud, saying, no, we have to address the human spirit. And I just feel so refreshed sitting here looking at this model um, as it recognizes spirituality as the core of human mental health and wellness. Now, I recognize there's a bias. I'm attracted to this kind of study. This kind of a study is attracted to me. So we're kind of symbiotic in this, but I hope you see this and recognize like it is a reality. It is a psychological fact that human spirituality is such a core principle in being a healthy human. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to go from the outside in, right? When it comes to lifestyle, lifestyle refers to relationships, sleep, habits, nutrition, and exercise. What some of those things I call the human basics, right? In past versions of the Meaning Project community, right? How relationships, how's our communication? What's our attachment style, right? That goes all the way back to childhood. And what is our tendency to isolate? You've heard me say before that alcohol and isolation, distillation and isolation is a recipe for disaster. But just today, we kind of joke of how our teenagers go upstairs into their rooms on their phones and can be there for hours at a time. And that's a known issue of adolescence, I guess you would say, that need to isolate. But sometimes what they're isolating on is detrimental and unhealthy. Go in there and do things with your teenagers, spend time with them, but also your partner, your spouse, or yourself. If you find yourself isolating, it certainly isn't healthy. We are wired for connection, and in the more healthy ways we connect and communicate, the healthier we are. Obviously, sleep is of a key importance. If you're not getting enough sleep, your brain function will suffer, right? Insomnia, apnea are things that need to be treated medically. Your circadian rhythm you can balance, but may need some work. As I've shared before, I've found myself drinking a little bit of mugwort tea, Mugwort, and have had some of the most wonderful sleep of my life, and then waking up refreshed. I highly recommend it. It's available on Amazon, easy to get to. A former psychedelic of the barbarians and Vikings. I haven't, I've just made tea out of it. Apparently, you can smoke it too because it's a grass, but haven't done that yet. Maybe someday. Um, Relationships, sleep habits. I love this, right? What are our eating habits? This model refers to disordered eating. Oh, boy, we can spend days on that. Our technology habits, I've spent days on that. And of course, our substance habits, I've spent a lifetime studying that. So our habits are such a key component to our lifestyle and our overall health. And then it goes even deeper into nutrition, diet, toxins, food sensitivities, gluten, all of these things we have to pay attention to. And then, of course, exercise, especially, well, at all phases of life, some form of flexibility, strength, and cardio is such a key ingredient and one that is often missed. And so when people come to me with depression and anxiety, these are the low hanging fruit. These are the simple things to address that you don't need me to address this. But so many people forget these things: relationships, exercise, habits. And they're so important to address for overall health and wellness. This model talks about the body. Some of this needs to be dealt with in a medical sense, right? The gut brain axis, the microbiome, leaky gut. These are all things that are becoming prominent in the research we need to pay attention to. What is our gut health? Because what is going on in our gut impacts our brain. There's a mind body connection. And what we eat and how we process it impacts our thinking and our feeling. How's our metabolic regulation? Are we processing insulin? What are our genetics? What are our hormone levels? I have many clients throughout the years who found it healthy to go get their hormone levels checked before considering any kind of daily psychotropic or antidepressant. It might be your hormones. Are they out of whack? Are they out of whack in relationship to what you're eating? We know much of the food we are being served in the United States is full of hormones and antibiotics, and that builds up and that. Hey, you can hear me lecture about this all the time. If you're concerned about mental emotional health, get your hormones checked. How's your brain working, right? Is it firing all the way? Is there some neurodegenerative disorder? Are you victim of a TBI that has altered your brain? The Amen Clinic does amazing work in SPECT scans for the brain. But you can always hop on. There's so many ways to optimize your brain. A lot of it has to do with your food. But if you receive some of these issues, TBI or neuro disorders, there's ways to improve that impact mental emotional health. Immune modulation. We're finding out more and more about autoimmune disorders, inflammation, infectious disorders, things like this. Mold toxins. That's right next in this kind of body issue. What are your detox paths? Do you have an excess of metals? I ran into a sad case probably 10 or 15 years ago when I first came to town here. A friend of a friend of a friend was experiencing these terrible difficulties where he was like degenerating before your eyes. His ability to speak was like disappearing. He was slurring like a drunk, completely sober. Turns out his body wasn't processing copper effectively. And once they established that and were able to remove the copper from his body, it was a path back to normalcy. But thank God he is a happy and healthy human these days. Molds. I've heard so many stories of molds, whether it was my good friend Dr. B out in Colorado or people here living a lake life. Mold comes in and it can definitely affect our mental health, our physical health. So that's, I mean, there's a lot to consider in the body and the mind-body relationship. And of course, when we talk about the mind, right? What are our traumas? Do we have a single event PTSD related trauma? Or is there a complex trauma? Um, mm, for some reason this week, maybe these past 2 weeks, I've had a lot of uh, first responders coming into the office, police officers, firefighters, veterans, um, with some seriously complex trauma. And well, going back to my previous conversation, we're finding the 1,000-year-old psychedelic substances like psilocybin and ibogaine are so helpful in helping first responders and warriors get past their trauma, their complex trauma. And as I dive into the history of it, you know, we live in one of the safest times in human history. Imagine what past cultures went through and what helping professionals, first responders of ancient times and warriors went through. And there's often tales of these coming of age stories and rituals, war rituals, post-war rituals that involve these substances to help them heal. And it's just, it truly, it incredibly saddens me and damn near just breaks my heart to see how these people that want to help are still struggling years, decades later. So for you, when it comes to your overall mental emotional health, what's your trauma history? Do you have trauma? Have you now, again, and I've talked about this, Rob and I talked about this a lot with some of my other therapists and my friends and coworkers this week. Um, just because you experience trauma doesn't mean you're traumatized. For some people, they develop resilience out of it. And even if you have been traumatized and you're working through it, the goal is to develop resilience, right? It's much like when I would teach young people about the triggers of substance abuse that they were trying to avoid. We can't avoid all difficulty in life. We can't avoid all triggers, but we can learn to deal with it better. We can optimize that. When it comes to the mind, we also talk about beliefs, our values, our conflicting, polarized thoughts, our feelings of power, empowerment. These are all things that are in the realm of psychology and therapy and that you can be helped with. But sometimes just a good self-help book, the right podcast can help you. But as you can see from this model, it all comes down to the core, our core, our healthy core, as we talk about in logotherapy, and this model illustrates our spirituality. How do we deal with grief? How do we deal with loss? Right? How do we deal with the existential crisis of knowing we're going to die? My goodness, how many times have we talked about this in Frankel's tragic triad? How do we deal with disconnection? If we go all the way out to the top of the model here, it talks about connection and communication. And in the core here, it talks about feeling disconnected. And of course, how ironic. You can see the logo there. This is straight from the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, the school I'm attending, IPI. But what does that say right there? What is a part of spirituality? Meaning making. We say in logotherapy, discovering meaning, but here they talk about still in some ways finding meaning. If we are misaligned in these areas, as you see on this model, what are the symptoms? Depression, anxiety, or what we call depression and anxiety. As I've said before, the way I was trained 25 years ago to talk to a person, look at their criteria, the symptoms, their criteria, and match them to a diagnosis called anxiety or depression just doesn't work anymore. Many people claim to suffer from anxiety and depression, but if we look at this model, maybe it's a combination that they can't communicate in the relationships. Therefore, they feel isolated and disconnected and aggrieved that they can't connect. Along with maybe they experienced a TBI and have some kind of metals in their body or experiencing some molds. They've got a little bit of leaky gut going on and they're not exercising. Look at all the possibilities that we can impact to change things like anxiety and depression. We can impact insomnia, mania, irritability. Ugh. How many irritable people? I know there's an irritable little troll out there listening right now. And I'm not referring to anybody in general, but a very specific person. He knows who he is, and I love him dearly. But, we all struggle with irritability at one point or another. Um, which one of these, or two, or 10 of these situations impact irritability? And of course, we get into the realm of psychology of psychosis, compulsions, inattention, headaches, impulsivity, right? There's so many things there. Um, Let me unshare to continue the conversation. And please, I'll include a link in the show notes. Go have a look at this. It's such a beautiful and powerful model. So I don't know. I love that model. It's a beautiful synthesis of everything I get to work on when people come into my office or when I share with them on Zoom or when I talk to you here. These are the things that over the course of nearly 200 episodes of the Meaning Project, we've talked about and addressed in different ways. And I will continue to address in different ways. Through this work, through my work with the Cardion app, please go download it. We are going into sales mode here soon, so you still have an opportunity to download it for free, but at some point there will be a paywall. I'm doing that work and bringing ketamine and other psychedelic assisted therapy to the office, the Meaning Project community, and of course my own personal work. I think I've shared with you. As I said, these were my four words, my four topics at the beginning of the year. Not my resolutions, but the words that I was going to focus on. Uh, Cardion, CAP, ketamine assisted psychotherapy, and psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. The Meaning Project community, and 100 miles. I started training for that 100-mile bike ride. It certainly will not be a race. It will be a bike ride, simply to finish and accomplish. And logging miles, I don't know, 5 days a week, I think. 2 days off, 5 days on, 10 here, 20 there, different things. Um, so for me, I've recognized that is something as I look at my calendar and I go, oh my God, my calendar is so full. Well, it's because I've actually consciously blocked out time these 5 days every week. And actually, there's something on my calendar. Even on the rest days, I've blocked out time to rest because we are all pretty busy these days. And I think we are all feeling a bit of dysregulation. And many of us uh, blame the political situation in the United States and all the, I don't know how you assess it, chaos or constructiveness, whatever's going on, has everybody, I don't know, we're all feeling it in different ways. And it is important to get in that calendar, to go back to this model that I just shared with you and look at what do you need to do? What are two areas this month that you want to improve upon? And what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to block out time to do it? I would challenge you, if you feel any areas of dysregulation that we just talked about, go look at this model, pick two of them, pick two. And starting, I mean, this is a beautiful time of year as we transition from winter to spring, as we go from kind of death to rebirth, right? Trees are blooming, flowers ideally are blooming here. Um, how are you going to bloom? How do you want to grow? How will you change? What areas will you address? How will you address them? And how will you block it out on your schedule to make that happen? That is not the way I saw this podcast going, but much like uh, app mental health and wellness app development or psychedelic journeys, life does not always go the way we plan it to. But ideally, there's some kind of pleasant ending at some point, some kind of finish line we can look forward to. And the one finish line we know, well, I mean, we're this again, it's Bicycle Day, April 19th. Just a few days ago, we celebrated Tax Day, right? And so we know at some point tax day comes every year and death comes for all of us. What are you going to do to continue to fill those granaries of time, as Frankl calls them, to continue to make meaningful choices and to grow and evolve, as Dr. Frankl calls it, to become the human being that you are supposed to be to accomplish the tasks you were put here to accomplish? Man, I love talking about this stuff. I love sharing with you. I would love to share with you directly in the Meaning Project community, working one-to-one or in groups as we move forward with different projects. So, hey, as always, thank you for this opportunity to bring a little bit of mental health and meaning, purpose, and resilience to your day. Take care.